I am live. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Yeah, I'm live. So we might as well celebrate the fact that I'm live with the Animation Truman Show jingle.
If you're like me, and you got no life and there's nowhere to go, then tune in to the Animation Truman Show. You'll be glad you did.
Isn't that fun? Excuse me. Yeah, so it's 9:30, and I've got Ed Hooks coming in at 10 o'clock to say hello, and I think that's actually a great question you posted there, Darren. I was going to ask Ed kind of right off the top to, particularly because probably some people aren't necessarily familiar with him, to give us a little bit of background and how he got involved with the movie Antz back in, I think it was 1998. So we'll let him tell that story, and that might dovetail nicely into your question. So should be able to get that question in right at the top there, buddy. And so until Ed shows up, I'll tell you the truth, it's kind of interesting. The Zoom, here's the Zoom window, right? And I was thinking, I could just pop this up here in place of the webcam, because OBS will not allow the webcam to work while Zoom's going, and vice versa. They would both be trying to grab the same device. So I was hoping maybe it had a stay on top option, but it doesn't appear that Zoom does. The Zoom window doesn't have the ability to make it sit on top. So anyway, we'll let that sit in the other window so that I'll see when Ed shows up. Meantime, what are we doing? Well, don't panic, people, and think that I've abandoned Salt and Light because I'm playing around with Bender. The reality is that I'm well ahead of schedule. The work, particularly on the score, as I sort of demonstrated, I think 2 days ago on the live stream, is going, very smoothly. And frankly, rather than saying, okay, I'm a little ahead of schedule, so now just pile on more and more and more and more of that project, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to jump over here and play around a bit with Bender, because basically I'm grokking out the aesthetic, if you will, of of Futurama and how it differs from what I've been doing with Salt and Light. And that's something that obviously we've talked about a little bit on the Discord. So that was my reference. I pulled out the internet for the color. So as I'm looking at this, what I'm seeing is that you've got basically a strong pose there, and so really the question would be, if you were to go from this to this mostly with the plastic tool, would that be suitable? The answer is I'm not sure. I think it would, actually, but I'm going to try it and find out. Because I would say Bender's arms are probably one of the key areas where potentially you get a lot of mileage out of the plastic tool, but not necessarily. It just, depends. So I think I'm going to just play with that while I, as I say, wait for Ed to show up, which I expect him around 10 o'clock. So I've switched my project into Homa. I've switched the project to the Futurama Project, which I created a zillion years ago. As you can see, there aren't very many scenes. This might actually be kind of interesting. See, I don't remember what I did with this stuff, so this is like a long time ago. Yeah, looks like I was playing around with Philip J. Fry, and I'm not sure if these are... Well, let's see here. It looks like these are standard Raster level. So it looks like I was trying to see if I took a picture from online and cut and pasted it, broken into pieces, or if it actually is an original drawing. It looks like it is original. Got some old, so I trust you guys will indulge me while I just poke around here a little bit. And this looks like it's a, who knows, man. I did a lot of tests back in the day. A lot of them were in Blender, actually. Yeah, so this was, boy, this is going back a ways. This is an early plastic tool test. You can see the corruption there of the way the plastic tool's set up with his foot. And I'm almost thinking, I wonder if those are actually vectors. Those look like vector. Maybe not. Nope. Not vectors. So anyway, let's go back to the Bender test, and what I'm going to do is take the starting pose and just cut and paste it in. So that's going to be a raster level, obviously, and then Tahoma, as you can see, took the liberty of centering it for me, because when you cut and paste from Krita, it basically crops it to, based on the alpha, so that the minimal amount is cut and pasted over. No, the interview's at 10, Sifter. Sorry. Good morning, Maria. No, I just started streaming at 9:30, and because I've got on my other screen, I've got my the Zoom call, and so when Ed shows up, we will welcome him to the party and sally forth, as they say. Okay, so we've got this raster image. Now, do I kind of wish this was a smart raster? Yeah, to a degree. I wonder, though, let me think about this for half a second. It looks like, I mean, we got that. I think I'm going to cut and paste that one in, too. Because, let's just do it. Paste in place. Okay, that's cool. Okay, so that's a little more interesting. Now, what if we did a cleanup on that particular... That's not what I meant to do, I don't think. I don't use cleanup a lot. Cleanup in progress. And yes. Okay, so it looks like, yeah, there we go. That didn't take long. So it turned Bender into a smart raster level. I wonder what happens. Let's try the same thing with this one. I'm curious how well it does at discerning the colors. I'm guessing it doesn't. The line processing. Let's see. Darren probably knows more about this than me. Clean up only the non-cleanup drawings. Let's see what happens. Okay, that's interesting. That's definitely interesting. Wow, that's like creepy. So it looks like what it did was it resolved various levels of grayscale within the one color. I've never seen that before. Don't know quite what to think about that, but okay. That's pretty weird. But this part is useful. Why, you ask, is it useful? Well, because number one, let's make a duplicate. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just erase everything except the arms. And here, of course, I'm going to do the opposite. So I think what I want to do is keep these little knobby areas in between as a reference. I don't have much of a plan here, folks, so I'm very much making it up as I go along. And we have 4 viewers. Let's see, you got Darren, Maria, Sifter, and somebody else. So anybody who's lurking around but hasn't identified themselves, who might be wondering about that Ed Hooks interview, that's at 10 o'clock. So 20 minutes from now. You know, unless Ed shows up early, or unless something horribly goes wrong and he doesn't show up at all. Stranger things have happened. Okay, so this... Yeah, really, actually, I guess what I really want to do is have that be there. And then this probably should be like that. The thing I don't want to do is start thinking too much about structure, like from a rigging standpoint. I just want to think of it in terms of what has to move versus what doesn't have to move. So the fact that he's got body parts is really kind of a coincidence. I don't know if that makes sense for you guys, but okay, actually I need to be careful here, because if we go back here, yeah, they're not all the same color. So actually this ribbed part needs to be one color, and then at least 2 other colors. What we could do is grab this image shamefully pilfered from the internet and use that as a color reference. A key, just move that up and away. So I guess what we'll do is we'll sample the... Okay, that's weird. Oh, I see. Duh. So what I'm doing is I'm sampling this color. So R key. And now I can go to this frame. Pretty amazing how your eyes will fool you when it comes to color, because that color does not look right at all. Hey, Tom. Good morning. Does not look right at all, I say. And in my other window, just checking the email. Do. So we'll sample that color. Oh, okay, that was dumb. I made a boo-boo. Need to grab a different color for that. Different color for that. Probably need the yellow of his eyes. And looks like the 4-tone should do the trick. Yeah, so his little hood thing is the light color, and that's the light color. Most of the rest of it is like the mid color. And I guess it looks like his hands are... Whoops. His hands have a leak. Oh, I know why. I'm in the wrong layer. Level, I should say. Okay. Hit the G key to sample that. Keeping an eye on the zoom window in case Ed shows up. And that. Hello. Oh. Well, you little villain, why did you do that? F key. Alright. Yellow. And My memory is terrible. So he's got the little, whatever you call that, which is missing in my picture. That's not good, so we better remedy that in a fast hurry. Morning, Amar. Good morning, good morning, good morning. So yeah, the whole Futurama thing has been, it's really just kind of, the more I've been doing, well, how do I put this? I'm finding myself increasingly determined that I am going to, come hell or high water, turn the creation of animated entertainment into my full-time vocation. That's basically where I'm at, people. And because of that, I'm just kind of thinking about things that do go beyond just salt and light. Stretch myself in slightly different directions. Now this is where, this is where we need to be a little bit careful, making sure that things are, in fact, in the correct layers and whatnot. So a few delays in my well, Maria, you need to give full attention to that feline. Okay, so now if we're going to go in and sort of punch this up a bit, what we would do is, now that with Bender's arms, it certainly makes sense to do the fill operation first. Although, to be fair, in Tahoma, you can actually just click and drag with the fill tool and it would fill all the spaces, so it's not that important. In Krita, not so much. There you really would need to fill each of these little spots one at a time. I don't like that. I think I'm going to spread that one out into two. Well, or not. Actually, come to think of it, this is where what I'm doing right now is going to backfire. Is in those lines. It would actually almost make more sense to animate this with the plastic tool, and then, seriously, would actually make more sense to draw the lines over top of it in another layer. But for the moment, we will carry on. X key, create mesh, apply. Okay. So, how do we want to do this? There's more than one way to skin the cat. Oh boy, what a term to use when Maria Torres is in the house. You don't use the term more than one way to skin a cat, for obvious reasons. So, Maria, I do apologize. That was a absolutely callous, heartless thing to say. Absolutely inconsiderate of your putties. Okay. So this is the root. Okay, so that was kind of dumb. So really that should be there. And then probably we should put a branch. I don't want this to turn into like a massively complex rig. So anyway, I think what I'll do is I'll put that there. But I'm pretty sure this is not going to work. It'll kind of work. It'll be like okay, but it won't be good enough. I'm really sure. We'll see if I'm wrong. Maybe I'll be wrong. Okay, so one thing I'm going to do immediately, since I'm sort of doing everything a little bit backwards, I'm going to take column 3 and the plastic tool and make it a child of level 2. That way, if I modify Bender around his torus, okay, that's not what I meant to do. I meant to rotate. Then everything moves along with it. You can't do that by parenting the arms. You have to parent the plastic tool because the plastic tool is what's controlling the arms. So in terms of flow up the pipeline, it would actually make more sense visually for the levels to be ordered this way, because that's actually the parenting order. I've never done that, actually, if you can believe it. I've never, hey Dave, here's a radical departure for you to try. That computer game. Play as a cat person, buy extra skins for your appearance. Makes sense. Use the custom brush for vectors to create the arms. That's not a bad idea, Tom, actually. I don't think I'm going to try that right this moment, but it's certainly worth trying. I mean, that's actually quite a good idea. Never thought of it, you know? Okay. So if we come back to the pencil test, where we are at right now is, well, we're not on layer 12. We're probably here. We're about, or I shouldn't say, I mean frame, not layer. Are we on frame 10? Yes, we're basically on frame 10. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this down just to frame 10. I guess we'll move this back up, our little reference items. Yes, we can move this, and it will how did I do that? I am a silly goose. That needs to go there. I was actually just trying to move everything to the opposite side of the one keyframe that's in there. So these, that can be turned off. Oh, Ed's here. I gotta let Ed in. Good morning, Ed. Can I can hear you. There you are. Okay, let me move my Zoom screen over to the main screen, and then I'm going to make a little magic here with a transition so my viewers can see something you can't, unless you're watching my YouTube channel. But it says learn more at edhooks.com, and there's a little picture of your book. So.
Oh, great.
Pretty fancy stuff. Pretty fan. How are you this morning?
Thanks. That's great. How are you?
Crappy, man. The weather in Fort Wayne, Indiana is it's like Seattle. It's like drizzly and kind of. How's Lisbon this morning?
Beautiful.
Well, lucky you.
Well, we had a little bit. It gets just terrible here. It's Mediterranean, so, but it's not tropical. There's a difference between Mediterranean and tropical. It's like weather in Lisbon is rather like the weather in Los Angeles, except it's not as dry.
Wow.
And
how cold does it ever get there?
It'll dip into the 40s.
You can live with that.
Yeah, but it never freezes. You don't get ice. You don't get snow ever.
Gotcha.
And it never gets sweltering hot in the summer.
Nice.
It's LA gets very uncomfortable in the summer. It gets baking hot.
Yeah.
And I remember same too with the Midwest, Chicago. We get sweltering hot. And
Well, if you
like
even get down into Tennessee, it's miserable in the dead of
yeah.
summer for sure.
Well, this is Mediterranean. You know, we're on the sea here. We got water on two sides. We got the Mediterranean on the south, and we got the Atlantic on the west on the east. So yeah.
I think it'd be the west, wouldn't it? Or is it actually on the east? I don't know
So the
where Lisbon is.
Portugal is the westernmost point of Europe.
Okay. Things you
It was,
learn. There's probably somebody here who knows that. We got like 7 viewers right now. I
how
want
many?
to
7?
7. Yeah, there's it
Hi.
probably, I might get to a dozen or something. I mean, I don't have that many followers.
It's okay. Good.
But this is our conversation, Ed. This is our time.
Fine. Good.
The first question I had for you today, though, really is to bring the viewers up to speed a bit who don't know your background.
Yeah.
The thing I'm wondering is, after being an acting teacher for 20 years, how did it come about that you got involved with Antz? I assume that would have been about 1998 or so. How did that all happen?
Yeah. That's what happened. I was a professional actor. Was trained in New York. I came into acting back in 1969, and I was in New York until 76 and did a lot of plays. Then I went to LA and I started working on TV shows, mainly TV shows. All those things out of the 1980s, Murder, She Wrote, and Golden Girls, and Full House, and Empty Nest, and all those.
Okay.
I did all those.
Did you ever work with my personal hero, Stephen J. Cano?
Oh yeah, sure.
Nice.
I did Hunter.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. And
I love Cano. He's the best.
yeah, he was very
In fact,
good.
I was crushed around 2010 to find out that melanoma had gotten him, just at a time when I was like, I've got to at least talk to this guy. This is when I was
Yeah.
right in the thick of making films.
Yeah, he produced a lot of stuff. He was a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a couple of shows for him, and I did also a lot of shows for a producer named Glenn Larson.
Okay, sure, I've heard of him.
Glenn Larson did Knight Rider
Mm-hmm.
and Fall Guy. I did quite a number of Fall Guy episodes,
Okay.
and Magnum PI, and
Right.
all these things. Anyway, I was a working character actor. I wasn't a star. But I was always doing co-star, guest star. I was certainly not an extra. I was an actor, a supporting actor. Almost all my stuff was with the stars of whoever the star of the show was. Usually my scenes were with that person.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to work with a lot of people. Along the way, I started scene study. I started teaching acting, professional level acting. And I had an acting studio in Los Angeles and another one in San Francisco. And I went back and forth between these two. And then what happened was in 1996, 97, one of my scene study students in San Francisco. You see, you never know what your students do to put food on the table. You presume everybody wants to be a good actor,
Right.
but you presume that they are, a bartender or a waiter, or they're driving Uber, or they're doing something. They're doing something.
There was no Uber back then.
There was no Uber. There were taxi drivers. But
Right. There were taxis.
Yeah, you presume that they're doing something to pay the rent and put
Yeah.
food on the table. And it's really usually not worth talking about, because we're really there because we're talking about acting.
Yeah.
So one night after one of my classes, scene study classes, one of my students who'd been with me for a year, he said to me, we were walking to our car, and he said, listen, I work for an animation company, and we're making a movie. He said, we've never made a movie before. We've only done commercials. And he said, I told him about you. As I say, he'd been with me for a year.
Right.
And he said, we're wondering if you come over to the studio and do an acting class on site. And I said, sure, why not? I didn't know. All I knew was that, I still was a little upset about Bambi's mother. And
We're
I
all
did,
upset, Ed, about
yeah,
Bambi's
yeah,
mother.
yeah. So, um,
Maybe.
so I went over there, and that was the first time I saw animators in this big dimly lit room with their headphones on and all their computer monitors and stuff. And it was like the Wizard of Oz. You're not in Kansas anymore, Toto.
Now, this was
Uh,
specific data images.
yes, it was.
Okay, so for
Yeah.
the viewers' enrichment, PDI essentially before they did this full length movie, as Ed said, they were doing commercials. They competed with, you guys can look this up on YouTube, but there was another group called Robert Abel and Associates, and some of the earliest CGI commercials that really were revolutionary at the time, late 80s into the 90s, were done by those companies. So they were
Yes,
really cutting edge.
indeed, indeed. So they did the Pillsbury Doughboy
Mm-hmm.
and all that kind of stuff. And anyway, I went in there, and at that time, I erroneously believed that if you wanted to learn about acting, there was only one way to do it. I figured you had to get up on your feet and act, which
Right.
is what I did with my scene study classes. I would sit in a chair, actors would act, I would give them a critique, I would assign scenes and stuff like that, and then they would do something, I'd give them critique, and then they'd do it again. I thought that was the only way to learn about acting. So I had about 35 animators there. And by the way, PDI had been purchased by DreamWorks.
Okay.
That was the thing, and the movie they were making was Antz, which was very much in competition with Pixar's movie Bug's Life.
Right.
Okay, so there was a big competition to see who was going to get their movie released first. And ultimately, Antz did win that. They got the movie out about a week before Bug's Life. So Antz turned out to be only the second CG movie.
Right.
The first one was Toy Story. So it was fool's luck, nothing more than that. I didn't know anything about animation. And my student, Ken Bielenberg, invited me to come over there and teach, at the studio. So what happened was I screwed it up. And because I didn't know how to teach animators. And you don't teach animators the same way you teach actors. Well, the human resources people took me to lunch. And I figured they were just going to fire me.
Right. It's
But
not working, Ed.
Not working. That's exactly what they said. That was their words exactly.
Yeah.
And it was, yeah. And I knew it wasn't working because half the people in the class stopped coming to class.
Oh,
after
I'm
about
sure they're
3
just
weeks.
glazing over, like.
Yeah. And also, I gave them scripts, and
Okay.
told them how to rehearse, and was going to get them up on their feet. I really thought that was the only way that you learned about acting. So anyway, that didn't work. I was losing. The human resources people said, well, if you want to experiment, we'll keep you on. Ken tells us you're a good acting teacher, and we believe him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's when I found out that my student, Ken Bielenberg, who had been with me for a year, and I never knew what he did in the daytime, was actually in charge of visual effects
Okay.
for this movie. And so he had a position at the company. That was the reason they believed him.
Mm-hmm.
So he had credibility there. And I didn't even know what was going on. And I wound up now getting the opportunity to experiment. So what I did was I got the animators back together, and I told them, I said, look, I think I understand something about acting. I said, but obviously I don't understand anything about animation. And you need to show me how you do what you do, and I need to shut up. And if I can understand how you do what you do, then maybe I can come up with a way to help you. I can maybe give you the benefit of what I know about acting in a way that'll be useful to you.
Right. Makes sense.
So that's what we did. They gave me a chair with rollers on it, and I went from animator to animator and sat with them while they animated that movie.
Uh-huh.
And
How long
and
were
I-
you in there?
Oh, it was probably a year,
Oh,
I would
wow.
say.
Okay.
And during all that, it was, yeah. And they would ask me, the individual animators would show me what they would, they had these little pieces, 5 seconds, and they doing it over and over and over and over. You know the drill.
We know about that, don't we, people?
Yeah, over. I had never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
Well, so then I had an aha moment. And my aha moment was actors, stage and movie actors, what we do is we work in the present moment. So we try to embody a character in the present moment
Right.
for the benefit of an audience, which is giving immediate feedback.
Right. It's totally real time.
Yeah. Animators don't have a present moment. Animators have 24 frames make a second. They have an illusion of a present moment. I said, well, hello. I said, so animators don't need any of this kind of training that stage and movie actors are going through. They don't need to get relaxation. They don't need emotional recall. They don't need to be able to turn on the tears right now. There's all kinds of stuff. They don't need this for but they do need to know how acting works, because they're going to apply this to those characters, those animated characters. And so I came up with a way of teaching it with a reduced acting to, at that time, about 9 or 10 principles that I thought were firm in acting.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would have lecture discussion on those principles, and we would illustrate them with clips from movies and live action and also animation.
Okay.
And that was what we did. And the animators took to that, and it worked pretty well. And then when the movie came out, I went ahead and wrote the manuscript for Acting for Animators, my book, and because there was no literature.
Right.
When Ken had me come over there to PDI, when I realized I didn't know anything about animators, first thing I did was go looking for a book on acting for, and there was none.
Yeah.
So I wrote this manuscript because I understood that animators don't have a present moment, and don't need to learn relaxation exercises. They don't need to do it. Some of them may like to do it,
Right.
but they don't need to do it, not for their skill set. So I wrote this manuscript, which nobody wanted to publish. I gave it to a bunch of publishers, and they all said to me, they said, well, there's already a lot of books on acting out there, Ed, and the animators can read those. And I said, no, these people are different.
We're different.
They don't have a present moment.
Well, we're kind of locked into a real slow motion.
Yeah.
And then we hope when it plays back at full speed, it'll look good, right?
Right. Anyway, finally we got a publisher called Heinemann, and they went ahead and published it. And the book was one of the things that helped getting the book published was that Brad Bird, who was pretty fresh off of directing The Iron Giant.
Yep.
I did an analysis of some of the scenes in that movie because I loved it. I put it in the book, and I sent the scenes to Brad and said, you know, if I've got anything wrong here, tell me. And he liked the manuscript. He liked what I was doing. And he went ahead and wrote a short forward for the book.
Right.
And and also he did not like the cover art. So he helped get somebody to do a new cover on there. Anyway, we got the publisher. And the book was accepted very quickly by the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. I was off to the races. And even today, after 20 years of doing this, I believe that I'm still the only person who tries to teach classical acting theory as applied to animation. And we're now in the 4th edition of Acting for Animators. And I've taught my master class in 35 countries, more than 35 countries. It's been Mr. Toad's wild ride for me.
Are you doing that? You know, we've had a pandemic. Are you doing that with Zoom and other tools like that virtually now?
Exactly.
Okay.
I have not traveled. I live in Lisbon, Portugal,
Right.
by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Your people there may not know that.
Mm-hmm.
5 years ago, my wife and I moved from Los Angeles to Lisbon, and we're quite happy here.
Mm-hmm.
But March of 2020 was the last time I traveled.
Good for you.
And I have agreed now in May, I'll be going to Stuttgart, Germany for the FMX Animation Festival. That'll be the first time that I have traveled since March of 2020. I feel like I've been under house arrest.
Yeah, I mean, a guy like you, I would expect that would be tough. I mean, you like to get around peeps and interact for real, I should think.
Sure. Well, I think for all of us, it's been quite a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be good to get back into the world. I hope that we all hope that COVID now is actually on the decline. So
there's a 4th wave happening right now.
I read about it.
I don't know how severe it is.
I hope that my wife and I have been triple vaccinated and boosted and all of that, and we stay up on all that. And I feel like we've done everything we can. And but I need to get back to my people. But the answer to your question is yes, I've been teaching over Zoom.
Okay.
And
so via your website, that's something that's available to people that might see this video?
It is.
Okay.
I tell you something else, just if I could just mention that one thing, is that during COVID, since 2020 March, my wife and I have we put up a new site for Acting for Animators video instruction.
Okay. Cool.
And it's there right now are, I think, 34 modules up there that range in length from 5 minutes to 20 minutes. And they cover most of the things that I cover in my master classes. Mm-hmm. And some of them, I cover them in more depth than I'm able to cover in the master classes because of time constraints. But the video stuff, it costs $12.95 a month, and it's stop and start whenever you want.
Okay.
It's easy enough. If somebody's interested in it, what they should just do is go to my website, edhooks.com.
You can see it.
And follow the links. Yeah.
It's right there on the screen.
Yeah. And if there's any questions, they can always write to me. I'm edhooks@edhooks.com. I'm online more than I ought to be, and I'm always available. Anyway, I got way off track. You asked about how I started with animators, and that's the answer to the question.
Mm-hmm. No,
And
that's what I wanted to know. And in fact, the first question I wanted to ask you from Darren, one of our viewers here, is he said the acting in Antz was more realistic than some cartoons, which for me made a more watchable film. I think he's comparing it to Bug's Life, maybe.
Yeah.
What do you think about the exaggerated overacting that you see in some cartoons?
It drives me crazy. It's unmotivated gesticulation, and it's very common. It's gone on. See, here's the thing. The earliest animators, going all the way back to Fleischer, Max Fleischer, and the early animators, their idea was you start with a pencil and paper, and it is almost magical that you can draw something that seems to come to life.
Well, it's addictive.
So,
It's an elixir. You know, when you first see
yeah,
that happen, and one of the dangers is that, especially with the digital tools we have today, you can get so addicted to what the tools can make it easy to do in terms of just making things move that, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, is you don't necessarily have the discipline of learning things like not only acting fundamentals, animation fundamentals, but also acting, the perspective of a storyteller that 20 years ago you had to learn that because we had to do everything the hard way, right?
yeah, that's right.
But carry on. I hope I didn't take you off track there, buddy.
No, I'm just saying that their idea in those early days was right, but what they did was they tried to act emotion.
Right.
All those early characters, the 1930s, all that, those characters act emotion, and that's why you get all this gesticulation.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, I'm so happy! Ah! You get all of this stuff. Now, they didn't know anything about Stanislavski, acting theory. They didn't know any of that back then. Stanislavski's books had not been published in English. It was it was new, brand new. And what we know now, and what I teach, is that emotion itself is not actable. Emotion tends to lead to action. Acting is doing. It's not acting, is feeling. You operate in an arena of emotion, but we want to see what the character is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the doing does not have to be terribly physical.
Right.
If I were to get you, Dave, if I were to say to you, okay, I want you to lie down on the ground and I want you to pretend to be a digital character, a digital person. Yeah, you're just pretending not to be human now. You're just going to be digital. And I got you to relax. I would tell you, feel the ground underneath your back, feel it under the heels of your feet and relax, breathe shallow. And I would just talk you down until you were just not hardly moving at all. And now I say to you, now keeping that, I want you to multiply 362 times 69. Your eyes will move.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that would be theatrically valid. An audience would be very interested in watching that for some time, even though it doesn't involve very much physical action. And the reason is because the formula is action in pursuit of an objective while overcoming an obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
That's the formula. So you're lying there. Your objective now is to come up with the answer to this arithmetic problem I've given you. Your action is to do the arithmetic. Your conflict, obstacle, is that you're trying to remain a digital person. So you're trying to do this without moving, but you're not going to be able to think about the multiplication without moving your eyes. Your eyes will move. Your body will be still and only your eyes will move. And you would be, that is theatrically valid. And they did not understand this back in 1932. And the problem we have is that there was no animation training, there were no schools, and animation, ever since then, has pretty much been taught through a system of mentorship, with one generation teaching the next generation what to do. And in this flow chart, acting theory really
doesn't fit anywhere.
Yeah, that's right. Only now is acting theory really entering the picture. And I've been very privileged to be somewhere near the front of this movement. And that brings you up to date. That's the thing. But all that over gesticulation is probably one of the most common notes that I give to new animators. Is I say, you know, your movement needs to be justified. The purpose of movement is destination. It's Aristotle said every human action has a purpose, and you start with that. The problem we have to solve is that actors, well, let me put it this way, animators are trained to first think about physical action.
Right, movement.
Because animation has to have physical action. So actors, it's a different art form. Actors don't think about physical action. Actors are trained specifically not to think about physical action when they're acting. An actor thinks about objective, intention. What do I want? Where am I going? Why am I going there? What will I do to overcome what's standing in my way? And then they do this. So we have a communication breakdown. I hear animators say sometimes, they'll say that the animator is an actor with a pencil.
Yeah, sure.
And I understand it, and in a way it's correct, but it leads to a misunderstanding. A lot of people who say that really don't understand acting. What's happened is they have been taught by a mentor how to maybe be a little more subtle with their character animation, a little more clever than the animator sitting at the next table, and they consider that they're a good actor. But in an animation, the animated character is the actor, not the animator. An animator is really a director of the animated character. From the audience's perspective, Mickey Mouse is the actor, not Walt Disney. Walt Disney's out of sight. So animators are invisible. Animators have to work through the character. I had an animator write to me not long ago, and he said, how do I know that my acting choices are the right ones? How do I know I'm making the strongest possible acting choice? And I wrote back to him and I said, don't ask me, ask your character. The character knows. You don't have to act once you know your character's values, your dreams and hopes and fears and phobias and handicaps and diets, all these things. Well, how big is the family? Is the character an orphan like Hogarth in Iron Giant?
So the practical idea for our viewers here is that if you're going to tell a story, and I really want to, since you train people in story structure, I assume you're something of a script doctor to some degree. Okay. So one thing I want to kind of grab a hold of is here we've got a community of essentially independent creators, let's say, at various levels of ability and intention, right?
Yeah.
And so what I'm wanting to do is kind of pin down, without necessarily giving too much, away from the book, because they can go get the book if they want to read it. But what are the common threads, especially ways that beginners go off the rails, for example, in applying story structure, good fundamentals to anything ranging from a 30-second TikTok video to a 90-minute movie to what I'm doing, which is a 12-episode epic, basically.
Sure.
You've kind of started getting us there with everything you just said, and I think if I can spit it back to you, what you're saying is if you're gonna make this character move or act in some way, know who they are, figure out what their story is, their backstory, so that you understand. One of the things you see in let's flip it around and say, in a bad movie, when you see an actor or a character do something, you say to yourself, well, he would never do that. Mm-hmm. That's both an insult and a compliment to the director in a way, or the writer, because we know the character well enough to have an expectation, but now that expectation got violated, right? So anyway, but so just to kind of help this audience, what would you say to that whole idea about the basics of sort of where you start to apply good fundamentals to going from a rough idea they have in their head to something that they're trying to create without going too far off the rails, either as an animator or as a storyteller? Is that a fair question?
It is a fair question, and the answer is that your character should 100% of the time be able to answer the question, what are you doing? And the answer should be in theatrical terms. And they should be able to say, this is my objective. And objectives are provable. In other words, if you want to go to New York City, you'll know whether or not you got there. If you want to ask somebody out on a date, you'll know whether or not they went. It's an objective is provable, and an action is anything you're doing to achieve that objective. And you play an action until you play a different action. You keep playing actions in pursuit of that objective until you either accomplish that objective or another objective takes its place. And then the third element is conflict obstacle. Mm-hmm. You need that. In theatrical reality is different from regular reality. In regular reality, that's what you get at the supermarket. It's what you get at the mall. Nobody wants to pay to see regular reality. In regular reality, you show 100% of everything. Theatrical reality is compressed in time and space. So you're only showing the parts of reality that are necessary for the audience to follow what's going on.
So as creators, we want to think about stripping away anything that doesn't contribute to, I suppose, things we can see and hear that answer those key questions.
Yes.
And then conversely, we want to think in terms of density. How do we maybe pack the most entertainment value into that little tiny moment that we're creating? Is that kind of
but you know what? Your audience is probably, you don't have to worry a whole lot about entertaining them. I hear that all the time. I'm doing this to entertain. Look, we humans are entertained by storytelling. We have a brain that's roughly 6 times the size that it ought to be for our physical self. And if you follow evolution, you say, well, why you got this big brain? Well, it's because of this. We're storytelling, problem-solving animals. And we need to tell stories in order to survive. This is how we do what we do. Now, you and your associates here right now are professional storytellers. What it is you and I right now, we're like magicians, and we're talking about where the rabbit is hidden. Your audience does not want to know where the rabbit is hidden.
That's a great way to put it. I really like that.
if the audience knows where the rabbit is hidden, then that ruins the magic act. So this is a conversation for us, for you and me. We need to know where the rabbit is hidden. And we need to figure, is there any new way to hide a rabbit?
I really like that, Ed. And I don't remember reading that in your book. I think I think that's fresh information for me. So but that's a great metaphor and so you're saying that I'm a little wrong in that worrying about entertainment value and density is not anywhere near as important in your view as the stripping away of the unnecessary so that you can have clarity. Is
correct?
That, okay.
And don't be trying to add so much. You know, animators all the time, they want to stick gags in there and all these things. There's, what do they call them? Easter eggs.
Right.
And
well, those can be fun too.
but you know, I remember talking to the director of Kung Fu Panda, and I met him. We were in China together, and so I was talking to him about Kung Fu Panda, the original one, and I said, you know, it's a wonderful movie. I think it's one of the best things I've seen DreamWorks do. I said, but where on earth, why did you have the bear, the panda, think that goose was its father? And
you know, that's a good question.
Yeah, and he said, well, it was a storyboard artist. One day, he said it was his idea. He put it into a storyboard, and I said, so what do you just kept it? And he said, well, yeah, we thought it was funny. And I said to him, I said, Mark Osborne was the director. I said, Mark, you should have fired that guy. I said, you got a wonderful movie, and it's totally dumb that the panda thinks that the goose is his father. It doesn't make any sense. And I said, and also you set up this gag in there where the goose is all the time saying, son, I've got something to tell you. Well, you know, it's going to tell him, I'm not your real father, I'm a goose. But then what happens in the end of the movie? He says, there's no recipe for Chinese dumplings.
Right. There's no secret ingredient.
No. And I really got on his case about it. I said, you know, it's such a wonderful movie. Why on earth did you? Because this happens with these guys. You stick stuff in there because it amuses you at the time.
Well, let me defend that choice though for a moment as a creator myself.
Yeah.
I do believe that was the most on the nose and confusing thing in the picture. But on the other hand, as an adopted person myself, you accept anything as normal that you grow up with, and there's a point where people start asking questions. But I want to say that choice was probably not executed that well. You know, vis-a-vis all your criticisms, I think they're valid. But at the same time, it did give a human element to the story that would have been otherwise missing, because it would have basically been more of an action picture straight ahead for me. So
I thought it was really good.
It was an amazing movie.
It's a really good movie. And the Chinese, by the way, were really upset they didn't make it. That was a big part of the deal. And they ultimately did make a movie that was a copy, by the way. Yes, there was another one. I forget the name of it. But I tell you, what they did was they made, it was the same movie. They just made the same movie. But they changed the panda to another animal. Is really basically. Let me tell you one more quick story, and then I'll move on. I was working at an animation event in England, and what happens when you work at a festival or a conference is that the hosts usually feed you dinner. You know, take everybody to a restaurant or something. And so I'm sitting at the dinner table across from a guy that I did not know. And he introduced himself. I'm not going to tell you his name right now. I could, but I'm not going to. But he's introduced himself. He says, hey, you know, he says, I'm head of animation, Big Hero 6, Disney. And this is the movie Big Hero 6. And
Right.
I said to him, I said, well, see, he did not know that I had recently written an article for Cartoon Brew in which I was a little critical of this. And so I decided not to ruin his dinner.
Right.
And so I said to him, I said, Big Hero 6. I said, you know what my favorite sequence was in Big Hero 6? And he said, no, what was it? And I told him, I said, it's when Baymax got drunk. He seemed to get drunk, really like a cell phone. He just lost his power. And he had to get back to the human's house to get plugged in to recharge. And so in that trip back to the house, he kept losing power. And the more power he lost, the more drunk he seemed. And I said to him, I said, I thought that sequence was really, really excellent, beginning to end. The acting was very good. And he said, well, thank you very much. And we sat there quietly for a minute, eating the meal, chicken, something. Okay. And then he said to me, he said, without asking, he said, well, you know, it wasn't always like that. I said, no. He said, no. He said, in the beginning, we had Baymax in a shopping cart. I said, really? He said, yeah. He was in a shopping cart, and Hero pushed him back home. And then one day, one of the storyboard artists, here we go, took him out of the shopping cart and put him on the ground. And we looked at that, and it worked a lot better. And I said, right, it would work a lot better. I said, of course, you know why. And he said, it was funnier. I said, right, it was. It would be funnier, too. Of course, you know why. And he said, well, we all looked at it, and we just talked about it, and we decided this just works a whole lot better. So we're going to, and I said, right. Do you know why? It came clear to me.
They didn't know why.
He didn't know why.
Yeah.
And this is typical. This movie cost $200 million.
That's a lot of money, people.
And you got this guy who's the head of animation. He's got a position in the Disney organization. He's in charge of getting people to making sure all the animators are on the same page acting wise and stuff like this. And he did not know why Baymax in the shopping cart was a bad idea.
Well, this is probably kind of prevalent in the animation industry because you've got people who are either extremely skilled technicians or old school animators who come into a role as a director. You and I talked about this a little bit the other day, that I have an advantage in that I am a writer and director and editor, right? Most animators don't have that advantage, so I see it through that lens. But I'll bet you if you look at the history of animation, the kinds of things you just highlighted are all over the place.
They are.
And I think you and I talked about it the other day, is one of the reasons for that is the way that the storyboard's been venerated as ostensibly a definitively superior way of working out a story, which I don't think you or I, either one of us, believe it is.
No. It's, let me tell you, to finish this way, it won't take but a second.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
The answer to the question, the answer for why Baymax in a shopping cart is a problem is that you should be able to freeze frame your character at any time and say to that character, what are you doing? And the character should be able to answer in those theatrical terms that I gave you a minute ago.
Right.
Action in pursuit of an objective while overcoming an obstacle.
So I'm running desperately to get plugged in is a better answer than I'm going for a ride in a shopping cart.
That's correct. If you ask Baymax in the shopping cart, what are you doing? He can only answer, I'm waiting for the human to push me back over to his place and plug me in.
Right.
That's not theatrically
Way
valid.
weaker. Well, that's
And
right, and obviously they're looking at it and they're going, well, it's funny, pushing him in a shopping cart, right? That's probably what the thinking was there initially.
it might have been, but once you put Baymax on the ground, now he has an objective,
Right.
which is to get back over to the human's house and get plugged in.
Mm-hmm.
He has an action,
Right.
which is to physically go there. And he has conflict in that he's losing power. So the more he travels, the more power he loses, and the more drunk he seems. So it is theatrically valid and funny. Baymax in the shopping cart cannot act.
Correct.
He cannot act.
He's just a victim being carried along, really.
Yeah. Now, this is what I struggle with as a teacher, because to me, this is as plain as this big nose on my face.
I'm sure.
It's obvious to me. And here I was sitting across the table from a guy who's an executive on that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't understand the first basic principle of acting: action, objective, obstacle. So this is their way of coming at stuff is often, well, we'll try this and we'll see if it works. If our gut says that this works.
Yeah.
If it does, then we'll do more of it. And if it works in this movie, we'll do it again in the next movie.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have the theory to underpin this stuff. Sometimes they get it right,
Well,
sometimes they get it wrong.
It's invaluable. I mean, and now I want to say something to Maria, who's watching right now, about the thing that you posted yesterday. Ask yourself this: when the camera pans over on the forest and then stops and comes back, why does it ever go over here? And just kind of with these things we're talking about, that's a question I'd be asking yourself on the thing you're working on right now. Why the heck did that camera bother to go over there? So I just wanted to point that out, because I know Maria knows exactly what I'm talking about and appreciates your input on this sort of stuff. One thing I have a question on, though, is, I want to say to my viewers that to be encouraged by the fact that, 20 years ago when Ed wrote his book, he reached out to Brad Bird and said, hey, I'm kind of doing this thing, and, if there's anything wrong with it, let me know, because it kind of mentions you. And then he became friends with Brad Bird. Mm-hmm. I did the same thing. I mean, when I reached out to you, Ed, it was just like, hey, I'm this idiot in Indiana making a cartoon all by myself. I just think you might find it interesting, and we wind up being friends. And so on the one hand, I want to say, hey, guys, realize that this stuff happens, and frankly, this is really what I believe drives the entertainment industry. It's just people who get along. Now, what is it about what I'm doing that to you is interesting? Is it the when you take the restriction of the minimalist approach? In other words, the economy of it. I don't have the time or the desire, frankly, to do Disney style animation, right? I'm just trying to tell a story. So is it that economical stripping away of everything but the essentials that's interesting about it? Or
you mean with Salt and Light?
Yeah,
Is that what
I'm just curious what you think about that.
In the first place, number one, I consider that you're a pioneer.
Great.
And I do, because I do believe that
I'm a pretty crappy pioneer.
Animation as an art form is turning a corner right now. And you and others in your generation, you need to stand on Walt Disney's shoulders and take the industry to places it has not been. Forget about trying to go where it's already been. To go follow your light. Mm-hmm. Keep going. And so, number one, the reason why I responded so strongly when you contacted me is because what I did when I saw your note, I went to Google, I checked you out, I saw that you were a pioneer.
Oh, that's very kind.
I did. And I said, oh, look at this guy.
Okay.
He's out there trying to do something all by himself, maybe with a few other people. And this is what we need. We need more people doing this. And so if I can be helpful, then I want to be.
Yeah, that's
And
very nice.
as far as Salt and Light goes, I've just watched a few episodes of it to take, to get to know you and whatnot. And one of the things to learn about acting is that acting has almost nothing to do with words. Acting has to do with impulse, with thinking, intention. It doesn't have to do so much with words. Stage plays are about words. When you go see a stage play, you tend to watch the person who's talking.
Well, as are animated sitcoms like Family Guy.
That's right.
Very much about the dialogue.
That's because those are 3 camera. This is, so they try to, and you're in front of a live audience. Okay, I've done sitcoms. I've done a lot of them, and so they actually are taping a stage performance.
Absolutely,
is what they're doing.
Sure.
A movie, which is what you got with Salt and Light. In a movie, the audience tends to look at the person who is listening, not the person who is talking. So my biggest piece of advice to you as the creator of this would be to continue to look for ways to cut to reaction.
Okay. That's awesome advice. I appreciate that.
Because you get 2 characters. One of them says to the other when they're sitting at a table, and the one character says to the other one, "I'm falling in love with you." Cut.
Right.
Wow. We cut. We go, where do we go? Where's
Yeah.
the camera go? Camera now goes to the other person's face. And what we're looking for is that person's reaction to what that other one just said.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Well, and plus,
And-
and I find that you can do so much with just a little turn of the body weight or the eyebrows or something that actually serves the economical approach that I'm trying to do. And then you see that in anime a lot, where they cut away from the guy who's talking because it's more expensive to do a bunch of lip sync than to have somebody else go, or whatever the reaction might be.
It is reaction. Editors, there's a book called what is it? In the second, Walter Murch wrote this thing.
Okay.
In the blink of an eye. That's the name of the book, In the Blink of an Eye, by Walter Murch, who's he edited The Godfather.
Oh, I'm familiar with Walter.
And Walter Murch, he said, I have been editing for 20 years, big movies, and always on my gut feeling of where the camera should cut. Where should we cut? We do this. And he said, then one day I realized that I was cutting where characters blinked. And he said, I never paid attention to this before. And he said, I started watching it. And a blink indicates comprehension.
Yeah.
And it's a connecting of mental dots. It's a reaction. You cut to reaction. So somebody says something, we want to see the reaction. I get a lot of new animators that send me their show reels, and they'll have these things on there. They're new animators, and so they picked up these, what they call the 10-second club or whatever. They'll take a 10-second clip from YouTube or someplace.
It's come up in the chat here just recently.
Okay, so they'll do this, and then they'll send it to me, and they want to know what I think about it. And well, what happens is 9 times out of 10, the animator has taken so much trouble to animate the character that's talking because it's the dialogue, and they do this, and 9 times out of 10, there's the other character isn't even there. or if he is there, they paid no attention
Right.
to
He
him.
might as well not be.
He might as well not be.
Mhm.
And my note almost always is what is the reaction? How is a person reacting? You need to include your other character, not just the one that's talking. I mean, in your piece in Salt and Light, the mouth is extremely crude on
Yep.
your characters.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't match up to the lip sync of the voice. It doesn't.
Right.
It doesn't matter. You're right. It doesn't matter. The audience says, okay, the character's saying this. And they see the mouth going. And so they just go right with you. It's not a problem. But my advice to you is to keep looking for ways that you can cut to reaction.
Okay.
And,
I will take that advice. That's great.
And remember that acting has almost nothing to do with words. If it's possible to cut a spoken line without ruining the story, then do it. Or if there's some other way that you can do it. I just have been working on an analysis of Sylvain Chomet's movie, The Triplets of Belleville. If you've never seen it, I recommend it. It has almost no dialogue. And it's a delightful piece having to do with a French bicycle rider,
Okay.
and who gets kidnapped.
The Triplets of Belleville.
The Triplets of Belleville, and it was nominated for a couple of Academy Awards, and I think it lost to Finding Nemo or something.
Okay.
But
So it's been a while. That's 10 years plus then, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah. Okay,
It's
sure.
been 15 years.
Okay.
But it was a wonderful, wonderful piece, and it has almost no dialogue. I want to just phrase this for you. I mentioned action, objective, obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, another way of saying those same things is problem and solution, and given circumstances of the piece. So you could say, if I want to go to New York, I remember I said it a minute ago, if this is your objective, I want to go to New York. You could also say that that's your problem. My problem is I want to go to New York. Okay, how do I get there? Well, I guess I'll fly. Okay, that's part of your solution for how to get to New York. Now what you need is conflict. I'm broke. I can't afford a plane ticket. Or if I've got some other appointment, I shouldn't go. In other words, the possibilities are limitless of what you can do. But Konstantin Stanislavski, who was the co-founder of the Moscow Art Theater, and he's generally considered to be the father of modern naturalistic acting.
Right.
His biggest contribution to acting was actually that he could take a script and break it down into what he called bits, B-I-T-S.
Mm-hmm.
And each bit is a problem and a solution. And you finish that one, and then it hooks on to the next problem and solution.
Right.
Problem and solution. That an entire script can be broken down into these bits. This is also the way that you, as an animator, need to look at the work that you're doing in an animation. The character should always be in some bit. What is the character doing? What are you doing? You can also say, what problem is the character trying to solve? Solution, problem, solution, action, objective, conflict.
Well, one of the points in your book that I think for my viewers is worth the price of admission. In other words, this point alone was paid for the book, you might say, is the idea of you talk about getting away from the terminology of conflict and you prefer the term negotiation.
Yeah.
And you can expound on that here as much or as little as you want, but I'll tell people that alone is a good reason to get the book. but the it's useful to fledgling creators for this reason. With my background as a filmmaker in the sort of faith and family genre, there's over the last 20 years there's been a lot of really, really, really bad movies in that genre, because that genre didn't demand a high standard. So you say to yourself, well, as a storyteller, well, what is it that's wrong with them? Usually, that point you make about negotiation would solve the problem, because you get so many situations where the writing is on the nose. And when you don't look at it as conflict, but as a negotiation, that very word puts it in, gives it a context that makes you think about the way real people avoid actually being on the nose. They avoid telling the truth. And the tension that comes out of that when people are pretending or avoiding or whatever, that one point alone would improve people's writing and storytelling, I think, tremendously.
Sure.
That's my opinion.
And there's only there's only three kinds of conflict that's possible. You can have conflict with yourself, you can have conflict with the situation, or you can have conflict with another character.
Right.
There are no more possibilities. And it is a negotiation. And in every negotiation, there's got to be a way that you can win and a way you can lose. If you're working on a scene and you can't see the negotiation, the character can negotiate with himself, can negotiate with the situation, can negotiate with another character, and sometimes simultaneously with different ones. But if there's not a negotiation, you probably have a problem.
Right. So to your point, as you guys out there as creators, you should be asking yourself, what precisely, well, as your character, what am I doing? We've already covered that. Number two, what is the nature of the negotiation that's going on in this particular shot? Because if there isn't one, there's a problem with your story. And again, that can be a 30-second TikTok, or it can be a full-length movie. It doesn't matter. The principles apply.
Exactly so. Acting is really fun, and the scene structure is fun. Storytelling. We are natural storytellers. Remember this: every human baby is born with the potential to pretend, and we are the only animal that in juvenile play can pretend to be somebody other than who we are. No other animal can do it. Your dog cannot pretend to be your cat. A lion cannot pretend. A lion cannot pretend to be a giraffe. But humans, a little girl puts on her mother's heels and starts clomping around the house. She's pretending to be her mother. The boy gets a toy stethoscope and he's listening to the doll's heart, and he's pretending to be the doctor. We are natural pretenders. We are storytelling, problem-solving animals. This is our unique distinction. We're the only animal.
So let's get good at it. That's probably a good way to wrap up here, actually.
It is. Let's get good at it. We're the only animal that can contemplate our own mortality. We know that we have a limited lifespan. And so everything is about survival. Everybody tries. Everybody has their own. There are no villains. See, this is another thing. Villains think they're heroes.
Absolutely.
They don't think they're villains. It's
it's funny. I just told my partner Valerie, I was saying that in Salt and Light, I want to devote an entire episode to Golek, the villain, who you're familiar with since you've watched the webisodes. Here's a guy who, even though he's the villain, this is a guy who can only ever be the highest level slave, but he's still a slave. And I think that it would be awesome to spend a whole episode delving into giving us kind of vis-a-vis the information in your book, is that we have to be able to empathize and sympathize with this guy's plight, even though he's the bad guy.
Of course. You know, to take the most extreme example, everybody uses Hitler. Hitler didn't think he was a villain. He actually thought that the world needed what he and Germany had to offer. he was wrong. You know, we don't know what was wrong with him. He might have had a brain disease. No, I don't know. I don't know what was wrong with him. However, I can tell you that if I was portraying Hitler, I would not portray him as evil.
Right.
He did not think he was evil. He thought he was a hero.
Yeah.
And this is really the key, especially if you're making animations for a grown-up audience. It's really important that you understand that villains don't think they're villains.
Well, what you're saying suggests something that I would say to fledgling creators as well, is that when you're having trouble with your story, you're kind of alluding to this with villains seeing themselves as heroes, is take whatever your first initial idea was, completely flip it around. Approach the scene or the story 180 degrees opposite of your first idea, and you're probably going to find that really interesting new possibilities just pop out.
That's right. Another good thing to do is remember that this is for the screenwriter in you. A piece of advice is try to find the good in bad characters and try to find the bad in good characters.
Yes. I'm with you. All right, we've, as I said the other day, we've squeezed the sponge pretty well.
Okay. Well, it's been good talking with you.
Well, we got to do it again, but not too often so I drive you crazy.
Well, I just thank the people that have tuned in here to watch us and to listen to and for your questions. I appreciated your questions. And I wish all of you just a creative, fun journey as artists. You are special people. You're not normal. Artists are not normal.
No, we are not.
And your job is to see things that the rest of the tribe cannot or will not see. And then you tell them about it.
Absolutely.
Tell them what you saw.
Great thought.
You guys are terrific.
All right, thanks, Ed. I'm going to say goodbye to Ed. And you guys look at the link there. Go to edhooks.com if you want to get his book. And again, I just want to thank you again, Ed. I really appreciate your help and your input and your ideas.
My pleasure. Good luck to you. Thanks again. We'll talk soon.
I appreciate it. Mwah.
Bye-bye.
See ya. What fun, huh? You know what, Tom? I'm sorry I wasn't able to ask your question about Primal. While we were talking, I'm really, my eyes are darting up to the questions that I sort of pre-wrote, as well as I'm looking at the chat. So I don't think I did a good job, you guys, of necessarily representing the things you guys posted. So I apologize for that. It's literally the first time I've ever done a Zoom-based interview situation. So. Anyway, take that, guys, for what it's worth. And thanks for your comments. I really haven't been able to zip through the chat. I think with that, I may be, I may come back and live stream and work a little bit more on Bender today, but I think for me, I'm probably a bit out of gas and want to take a break. So, thank you, Maria. You're very kind. So look for possibly I may be live streaming again later in the day, just working on either Futurama, or I may do a session of actually voice work, because the 4th episode of Salt and Light or webisode, that's really all that's missing right now. A couple sound effects and getting the voices in there. So I'll be getting, I'm actually going to be getting a voice recording from the lovely and gracious Maria Torres, who is playing 2 roles in the next webisode. And then I got to obviously smack in all the voices that I've done myself, or am going to do myself. So anyway, with that, I may pull this up later in the day and rock and roll on some voice acting. So we'll see. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and take a break. Say goodbye to all you guys. I'm glad you enjoyed the interview. Maybe we'll get to do more things like this. It's been a pleasure and a privilege to get to know Ed. So anyway, with that, I will say, you guys, There will be more later.